Monday, March the 20th of 2023 will be a historic day in the continent as 4 key African countries will see planned protests against harsh economic times, clamor for the expansion of democratic space, and a push to have governments accountable to the citizenry. Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Tunisia will have all planned demonstrations in major democracies.
The political move for economic and democratic changes in Africa will not only be witnessed here on the eastern coast of Africa, but also in the northwest and southern parts of the continent, with the political players leading the demonstrations Monday insisting that this is the only way for change to come, but governments also insisting that they will ensure that peace and security remains firm as they call out the political players for this move.
Kenyan and South African heads of state have hit out at political dissidents led by Raila Odinga and Julius Malema, who have in their own right pushed for anti-status quo protests in the eastern and southern coasts of Africa.
Nobody can just stand up and say, I have all the right to do whatever I like. That right is not absolute. It is a limited right. It's not underpinned by violence.
And we have no problem with you organized demonstration. But please, it is your responsibility to work with the police to make sure that the rest of the citizens of Kenya, their lives are not disrupted, their property is not destroyed.
Governance experts note that the 4 countries pushing for change lie in a cross formation covering the edges of the continent. They also say that there are big economies which are regional leaders in their own right.
Afrika Kusini, kule pia kutakuwa na maandamano ya amani. Upande wa Nigeria kutakuwa na maandamano. Tunisia, kule Senegal, na hata Gambia. So sio Kenya peke yake.
South Africa's army has announced it will deploy troops to guard key infrastructure and reinforce law enforcers ahead of Monday's nationwide opposition strike to demand President Cyril Ramaphosa's resignation.
The expert report effectively suggests that this government must resign because our government and the country is on an autopilot.
The concurrency of the mass movements of the March 20th date has been explained.
I believe nothing just happens. I will give credit to South Africa. Julius Malema is the one who actually over 3 months ago announced that he would earmarked this date. I do not know whether the other leaders who have picked up on these clarion calls, whether they copied him for significance, because I believe it was not just coincidental. The noise that will be generated from Africa tomorrow will be that citizens are demanding for more from their government.
Hello. The opposition movement in Kenya is pushing for the government of the day to ease the runaway cost of living while also expressing concerns on the legitimacy of the government of William Ruto.
We want Kenyans to come out in large numbers and show the displeasure with what is going on in our country.
Planned protests in Tunisia against the country's regime have also been explained. The 25 July movement has announced plans for a gathering on Habib Bourguiba Avenue in Tunis to demonstrate support for the government's policies on March 20th. The day commemorates Tunisia's independence from France in 1956 and is often an occasion for major rallies and anti-government protests.
They're protesting because their president, Said, number one, purportedly made racist remarks about migrants in his country. He's been clamping down on the opposition. He's been actually taking on more power, getting more power than allowed by the constitution. So his citizens, feeling that this is the anniversary of the Arab Spring over 12 years ago, citizens are coming out to protest about how he's handling issues in the country.
Africa's most populous nation that has this weekend held gubernatorial elections will also see opposition leaders lead protests in major cities against a new administration that is awaiting a 90-day constitutional window to be sworn in after a hotly contested presidential election in February 2023.
Atiku Abubakar has planned to lead a protest tomorrow on the 20th of March to protest against what he feels like the INEC, that is the electoral body, feeling the favoritism and the lack of transparency.
Diplomacy experts say that with a move like this one on the African continent, African citizens are beginning to understand what their rights are and what they are owed by their respective governments.
I want to see African governments listening. I want to see opposition leaders being responsible, and if things get out of hand, also agreeing to be held accountable.
A peaceful protest on March 20th has been seen as a positive step for democracy in the continent, with many holding a collective breath that this will be achieved. Leila Mohammed, NTV.